everybody, and thanks for joining us for another week of the Rec Poker Podcast. This is the Forums edition, which means that I'm your host, Jim Reed, Bluffsterini in the home games. And if you want to learn about me, you can go to rec.poker/crew. And you can learn about not just me, but everyone else on the Wrecking Crew. But hold on, you don't have to take my word for it. You can hear it from them, hear it themselves tonight. Crew members, why don't you introduce yourself to Rec Poker Nation?
I am Chris Jones. I'm 5B5 on Twitter and 5x5 on PokerStars.
I'm John Somsky, also known as Poker Geek MN everywhere.
I'm Kim Kilroy. I'm PetBet33, most places, Fergie56 on our home game.
And I'm Rob Washam, and I'm Rabman50 just about everywhere.
I'm Taylor Moss. I'm Gopher Boy TJM in the home game and at Taylor_Moss on Twitter.
And as you can tell, it takes a village to keep Rec Poker going. That's why we're so grateful to our sponsors, Website Amp and Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino. And that's why, we're all here, because we love talking together. We love learning together. We love getting better at poker together, railing each other, supporting each other. That's what Rec Poker is all about. So if you've got an email address and a smile, come on over and sign up for a free account and join us here in the Rec Poker Forum. So every week, because I've got the best job in the world, we take a forum post from the Rec Poker Forums and we talk about it here on the air while we're trying to steal each other's chips in the nightly home game for Play Money, where we all learn a little bit there too. So we are taking a post from ARW, who's probably, one of the great epic, prolific forum posters here at Rec Poker. ARW, my man Adam, he's got a brain like a steel trap. He always puts these excellent posts together that are really well broken down. And I encourage all our members to go check out the post itself. And this one is called Cheap and Deep, Should I Call River? And to set it up, we're actually going to take a look at two hands. They're an orbit apart from each other. Both hands are blind versus blind, where our hero, Adam, ARW, is in the big blind, and it is a small blind versus big blind situation. This is a $300 tournament, multi-entry, multi-day. This is day one. The opponent is to Adam's immediate right, and in his words, in both hands, everyone folds to the blinds, and the opponent limps in pre-flop, and I'm in the big blind. The effective stack is 30 big blinds. Hero is about 2 big blinds fewer than the villain. So the villain covers hero. So in hand number one, the small blind limps. We have ace-10 offsuit in the big blind. We raise to 3, and the small blind calls. The flop is 9-5-3 rainbow. Small blind checks, and it's to us. So we can start right here. I think ace-10 offsuit is a good raising hand pre-flop when it's limped to us. We can talk about the sizing we might want to choose or something like that, but I think that's a pretty uncontroversial raise. And when the flop comes 9-5-3 rainbow and it's checked to us, what is everyone thinking here when it comes to how to proceed? Kim, I see you're unmuted, so why don't you go first?
I'm unmuted because I just want to say I think that in both of these cases, I think that's the raise is a little small. I think we should be raising to at least 3.5. And it may seem very just like such a trivial point, but it just makes a difference. And I think so. I think the pre-flop raise size is just a little small, but that's nitpicking. I also noticed in both these hands, we check. It goes check, check in both hands. And I think once we've been the pre-flop aggressor in any flop that's decent for our range as the pre-flop aggressor, then we should be taking the lead and making a continuation bet on the flop. So in this first hand where we have 2 overcards to the flop, I think that a small C bet is in order in this hand. I don't know if anybody disagrees with that, but I think that we should be C betting this flop of 9-5-3 rainbow.
Yeah, we've got 2 overs with the ace-10. It seems to me like this is also a spot where we should be making a continuation bet out there with whatever the sizing is we would choose typically. And if given it's played as it is, there should be about 6 or 6.5 big blinds in here, depending on if there's an ante or not. So what kind of sizing would we like in that case, Kim?
So there's probably about 5 big blinds in the pot, probably close to it.
He raised to 3, and the small blind called, so it'd be 6 or 7, depending. If there's an ante.
Yeah. So I would say 2.5 to 3 big blinds is fine in this sort of spot.
And we're going to be doing that at a pretty high frequency with a pretty large portion of our range that takes.
I think it should be with range.
So. Yeah, I think so too. So I like the sizing. So
I feel like maybe ARW is sort of playing his cards instead of his range in some of these spots. Like if he had raised here with 10-9, would he be just checking back here?
I think he'd be betting. Yeah.
So.
I think you're right, Kim. And I think this is a range bet to a small sizing in a vacuum. I like that. I like that choice. We do, as played, we do check behind. Yeah, Rob, sorry.
Yeah, I think if this had gone check, complete, and then a check behind is just fine. But I like Kim's point of if you've taken the pre-flop aggression as you have, let's continue it now on the flop.
Yeah, because one of the reasons we chose to make that raise pre-flop was because ace 10 has certain qualities, right? And when you get a flop like this, you don't like owe it to yourself to continue betting or anything, but you end up with a good candidate for a c-bet, as you're going to find will be the case with a lot of your range that you get here with after taking that pre-flop action. Taylor?
Yeah, and like the main reason behind it is how like boring this board is, right? Like what are they limp calling with? What are we raising with? And this board doesn't really change the power dynamic of it. Our range still crushes their range. Like the best they have is a 9. And how many 9s are they like check calling with? So we're just in a really good spot to bet our whole range. And when we're betting our whole range, we can downsize. So yeah, I'm totally on board with Kim. 2.5 big blinds sounds absolutely perfect to me. Even going bigger pre sounds great to me. Like, yeah, that's how I think we should be approaching this.
Nice. So in real time, it goes check, check, and the turn comes the 10 of spades. So the board is 10-9, 5-3, 2 spades. And the small blind leads 4 big blinds into a pot that we decide is probably 6 to 7 big blinds here. So when the small blind leads 4, that's a more than half pot bet. We've got top pair, top kicker. What are we thinking in that spot?
I personally like either a call or a raise here. I think that if we raise, we can get called by all the worst 10s. By 10 jack, queen 10, king 10, 8 10, 7 10, whatever. We can get called by those. I think we can get called by a 9 as well.
Yep, some 9s to check the flop for sure.
Yeah. So I don't mind a raise. I also don't mind a call, just controlling the pot here. And we're not really afraid too much of anything on the river. We have top pair, top kicker here. So
yeah, and it's not like our opponent never has us beat here. They, maybe they have some combos of 9-10 or 9-5, 5-3. Theoretically, they could have checked those on the flop and just not had an opportunity to do anything else with them when we check behind. But almost every combo that our opponent has is behind our hand now with top pair, top kicker, given that this is the board that's up there. So I think we should be proceeding fairly confidently. I like a little raise here as well myself.
When we call here, we're really just trapping.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah. And there are some, there's a flush draw out there now. There are some mid-board straight combos available. Depending on what comes down. And those are going to be kind of, some of the hands that did get here by this action from the small blind. So, there are some rivers we don't want to see. That's true. Chris?
Yeah, no, I was gonna say I kind of like a raise here as well. There's really the only, I guess there's 10-9 that just got there. And if our opponent has some sort of already had a set or some kind of weird two pair, maybe those are ahead of us right now. But there's actually a lot of rivers that are terrible for us, given this action. Once small blind checks and then bets, they're probably, they may have 10, like Kim's mentioning, that we dominate, but a lot of the other hands that are choosing to bet here are going to be hands like some of the open enders, some of the flush draws, the queen jacks, the jack eights, a lot of those kinds of hands are going to choose to bet on this turn. And it makes it so that there's actually a lot of cards that come, because we don't know what they have. A lot of cards are going to come on the river that complete one of those draws, and we don't know which one they have, right? So it's going to make rivers very difficult, whereas none of them are in play, and it's going to be hard for them to continue with most of those. They may choose to, but if we price this raise high enough so that they can't, I don't know. I like a raise here.
And Chris, I know when you're on the other side of this, one of your favorite spots is where there's multiple draws that could come in. You're on one draw, but you have the opportunity to represent the other one when it does come in. So it's a spot where you're going to be very sensitive to that being the killer that you are on that front. Yeah, Kim?
I just find for population, not as many people bet these draws out of position as they do when they have position in the hand, because they don't really want to get raised off their draws. So I find not everybody, obviously, but a lot of the population will just like check call with their draws, or even check raise with their draws, but they won't often. Most of them, I find, don't bet out when they're out of position.
I mostly agree with this, but I think part of the problem is what started this on the flop when we didn't continue.
Yeah.
Because I think now that we've shown sort of a lack of interest in the pot, and like if they're sitting there with, I don't know, whatever, 6-7 of spades or something like that, right? And the spade comes, and now I got a gut shot, I got spades, I still only have 7 high. I might as well bet. I think you'll see people do that quite often when they get that kind of equity. Whereas that kind of hand is going to be, if they're a smart enough player and they understand, or maybe they don't have 6-7 of spades. This has been a whatever. They've got even a worse kind of spade draw here. I don't know.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I think when we do, and because we checked the flop, we're also telling this player that we're not as likely to bet the turn. So if they do have that kind of hand that they would typically enjoy expressing through a check raise, they're going to maybe think they're not going to have that opportunity here. So they might lead with it in this particular spot. So I think that's a good dynamic to be thinking about. So as played, the small blind leads for 4 big blinds, and Adam calls on the 10 turn. So we've got top, the board, the river comes a queen, which is not, does not make a flush. So the board is queen 10, 9, 5, 3. And the small blind leads 8 big blinds. So they led 4 big blinds on the turn. Now the queen comes in and they lead 8 big blinds. So now actually, just to clarify, he says small blind leads 8 big blinds here, but then later he gives us the option of calling 6 big blinds. So I'm not actually sure if the lead was 6 or 8, but Adam's question number 1 is, should the hero fold, call 6 big blinds, or raise? And the question 2 is, if you call, what hands can you actually beat? So right off the top, does anyone have any inclination there as to whether they should fold, call, or raise?
I think we've played this hand so passively that we're now playing it as a bluff catcher, and it's just a call. And it has to be in our minimum defense frequency every day of the week on this run out.
Totally agree. I think from the small blind, he could be doing this with any 9 because we haven't shown any aggression other than the pre-flop aggression, right? He could have let out on that turn with some 9 that missed everything, or even a 5 for that matter. He could have a some sort of a 5 hand that he just figures he's going to put the pressure on because we've shown nothing but passive. We haven't done anything other than our raise pre-flop. So raise pre-flop means we have a naked ace somewhere that missed this everywhere, right? And so he's saying, well, he's just got a naked ace. I'm just going to bet this and take him off of it because all he has is ace high at the best, maybe king high. So I think he could be doing this with a lot of garbage. It's a blind versus blind. I mean, it's a typical blind versus blind spot where nobody has anything. Their ranges are so wide, nobody has a real hand, and you figure if you paired anything, you're going to be good. So, like Kim said, he's got a bluff catcher, a very good bluff catcher. I would definitely call.
I think that we're gonna be beat a not insignificant amount of the time here. But the pot is either 21 or 23 big blinds, and we have either 6 big blinds or 8 big blinds to call. And so we don't have to be right and win the pot very often here.
Yeah, to go to the other option, should we raise? I think the option is a resounding no. We should never raise here. We have a very clear bluff catcher. We don't raise with bluff catchers. So let's take that off the option. And then the other question is, if we call, what hands do we lose to? Which there's some out there. Like we've played this passively. There's plenty of hands that have gotten there. I mean, Queen 10 obviously hit 2 pair. 10-9 has 2 pair. Queen Jack beats us, plays it the same way. King Jack on that same line played and beats us this way. Potentially pocket 3s, pocket 5s, pocket 9s, things like that. So there are hands that we lose to, but like the list kind of comes to a stop right around there too. So then it's just how many times are they bluffing? And this is my home ground that they play at. And I know there's a lot of players that as soon as you show them one sign of weakness with that flop check, they're going to just start betting at it and try and taking it away. So I think there is a decent chunk of ranges here that are just made up of junk, that bluff catching here is going to be a nice way to go.
And we do have we've kind of mentioned this before. They have some thin value bets here that we're beating as well. So they might not be thinking about it as a bluff, but it's a value bet that we're beating because we've under-repped our hand there. So like that betting a 9 here feels like a thin value bet, not a bluff. So when you
even
add
King 10 or Jack 10 as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
They bet the turn.
Because they did lead the turn, yeah. And then one thing that jumped out to me when we just started talking about this is it actually matters to me, and you guys let me know if we're on the same page here. When the turn bet is 4 big blinds, when the river bet comes out, it matters to me whether it's 6 or 8 big blinds, because 8 big blinds is just a progressive betting pattern where I bet 4 before, so I'm going to double it here. Everyone can make their own assumptions about what that says about the strength of their hand. But when they effectively down bet the river by going to 6, that's either someone who's got a very comfortable value range who definitely wants to get called, or it's someone who's taking a cheaper bluff than they would have to by doubling their bet size from the previous street. So if it's 6 big blinds, given the range that got here and how little of it is value, I'm more inclined. I'm probably calling in both cases, but I'm much more inclined to call the 6 big blind than the 8 big blind. So it feels like we're calling here. The group feels like we're calling here, whether it's 6 or 8 big blinds. Chris, do you want to color that?
I wrote in the post that I'm folding. So, but I hear everyone, and I think you're probably all right. So I'm probably just too much of a nit. But I think we would know a lot more if we had c-bet this flop. I think we've allowed a lot of hands to get here. and I much prefer a line of c-bet on the flop, and then once we maybe get to 10, we can check that back on the turn, and then I think we've got a very comfortable play on the river. Whereas right now, I think we've got a lot of hands that I don't think would show up here. I don't think like Jack 8 ever shows up here. Rarely shows up here. I don't think a lot of hands that now beat us, I think are not here. So I'm probably folding this. Might be too nitty because I think we're losing to a lot.
I think that's too nitty, but you do say in that if you're not folding, you're shoving. And I want to know what you think you're getting to fold or get called by that you're beating, or what you're trying to get fold that's beating you. Like,
I think I can get them off of a queen here. I think I can get them off, because we've played this in a really weird way as well. I think I can get them off some value that's not straights, basically. Their one pair hands are going to have to fold that are thinking they're betting for value here.
Yeah, I just think we're far better using it. I think there's so many hands that if we get called, we're dead here. And I don't think we're getting called by a worse hand.
Oh, right. No, I'm right. I'm shoving as a bluff. I'm trying to get folds. I'm not trying to get called.
Right. So
there's nothing worse that's calling us.
You're turning your 10 into a bluff.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I just think with the odds we're getting on this, that it works as a good bluff catcher in this particular, just because we played it so passively. Yeah. We haven't shown any strength.
Yeah, if we knew more about our opponent and what they considered to be a value bet here, like what they considered their value range to be here, then maybe that would make the decision easier. I think I'm kind of just deciding that this opponent is going to value bet a bunch of 10s and 9s here, and that switches the odds over towards calling just because we have so many. We're just crushing that part of the range. And I don't know how many queens they have. Well, that's the question, though. That's the question.
So that's actually why I'm saying, like, I'm turning this into a bluff, because, like, my experience is that the field doesn't bet those. They turn those into check call.
I see.
Hands. They're not leading out with a 9. I don't think most of population is leading out with a 9 here. They're too scared of getting raised off their 9. They'd rather get into check call mode. I've got value. It's showdown value. If you don't bet too big, I'm going to check call you. And so I don't think you see a lot of 9s leading here. Do you think? I mean, maybe I'm wrong.
Well, it's a good point that the turn is the 10, and that's when they decided to lead. And if they had a 9, I'm not sure that they'd be as inclined to lead that as with some other holdings. I mean, we're beating all the 10s, which is great.
Well, it's blind versus blind too, remember? So, again, the ranges are going to be pretty wide, and the fact that you did not c-bet the flop, the guy's going to, if the guy does have a 9, he's going to feel pretty good about it. Say he had 8-9. He's going to feel pretty good about it, because the 10, well, that's just one little card over mine. I mean, it's I can see him betting the turn with a 9.
Yes.
The turn, yes. It's the river, though.
We only have to win this 1 in 4 times to make this a profitable call. So do we win this 1 in 4 times? I think we probably do.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, having the best 10 helps for sure. Now, what do we think? Is there anything about this player limping the small blind that we can extrapolate to their post-flop play? Like, do we think this player is less likely to? Are they a more? Can we say that they're like a more passive player because they limp the small blind, or is it just not enough? Because I know limping the small blind is also part of an excellent mixed strategy as well. So
I don't think so. A lot of people at 30 big blinds will limp every small blind, whether it's strong or not.
Yeah, I think that leaves his range wide open. It caps his range, obviously, because I think he's either going to raise or he's going to limp re-raise with monsters. So you've capped his range pretty much to a bunch of garbage, but he's going to call with a lot of that garbage.
So then
unsuited connectors are a call there.
Right.
I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that you're going to call there.
So then when we make the raise pre-flop, and then we check behind that flop and we call the turn on a 10, should he be worried about us having a queen? Like we talked before about how we're going to be making that raise pre-flop with a lot of sort of like unpaired Broadway cards.
You can have all jack queens.
Right.
There. King, queen.
So do we think that, are they kind of leading into this in a less bluffy capacity because they're actually crediting us with having that queen more often? Because that does change the range of hands they're going to make that play with.
I go along with the previous, I can't remember who said it, that a lot of people, when you just chuck back the flop, they're just going to lead any turn.
It's true.
And if they happen to have 2 spades here, they're going to do it every day of the week. Some players. So it depends on the type of player.
All right. Well, good conversation. Let's hear from our friend Jonathan Little, and then we'll wrap this up and move on to hand number 2 after the break.
Have you ever wondered whether you should call a preflop raise or 3-bet instead? What do you do when you have a flush draw? Do you raise it or do you just call? What do you do with ace-king when you miss the flop? Are you tired of guessing about what the right play is with your particular hand? Well, my name is Jonathan Little, and I am a 2-time World Poker Tour champion and creator of PokerCoaching.com, where we offer over 1,000 interactive hand quizzes where you play a hand and then get real-time feedback from our world-class pros. Don't guess and don't stress. Just register for your free account at PokerCoaching.com/recpoker right now.
There you go. You heard it here first, folks. Go get that PokerCoaching.com account, and if you don't think it's valuable, you will get your money back. I guarantee it. So email me, jim@rec.poker. If that Jonathan Little character gives you any trouble, we won't stand for that around here. So we don't get results from this post, but it's an interesting position. Any closing thoughts before we move on to the next hand? I'll just introduce the next hand is basically an orbit later. It's the same player in the small blind. They limp the small blind again. One difference is instead of having ace 10, this time we have jack jack. And when the small blind limps, Adam raises to 3 big blinds again. And I think we'll all agree 3.5 would be better. Pretty trivial difference, but I agree with Kim to size that up a little. And the small blind calls, of course, otherwise it wouldn't be a very interesting hand. In this case, the flop comes queen of hearts, 9 of spades, 4 of hearts. We have the jack of hearts in our hand. So we get the small blind check. So we're holding jacks on queen 9-4, 2 hearts. Any argument for checking or betting here? Does anyone have a preference?
Always bet this flop.
Yep.
This is again a good flop for our range, and I'm just always betting it. And this time I'm betting it larger than the very small bet because it's more coordinated. It does hit the small blinds range. I also don't mind getting re-raised here. I'm still going to be able to call. So I would be betting at least half pot here.
Yeah, it's a range that it's not bad for the small blind. They are going to have some hearts. They're going to have some straight draws there. They're going to have some medium pairs and stuff like that. But it's good for us as well. And we're beating more of the range than is beating us. So I think it's definitely a good spot to get a value bet in. Very draw heavy board. We're in position. We've got the betting initiative. I agree. And I'd like to see a bigger bet here because of the board texture than we saw in the last hand. As played, it goes check, check. And the turn is the 10 of hearts. So in this case, the small blind leads the turn again. But this time they lead a little larger. So it's the same pot size as before because the same action pre-flop and on the flop. On the last hand, the small blind led 4 big blinds on the turn. This time, the small blind leads 6 big blinds. So it's Queen of Hearts, 10 of Hearts, 9 of Spades, 4 of Hearts. That 6 big blinds must be pretty close to a pot size bet, I think, at this point. So that's a pretty big bet on Queen 9 4 2 Hearts. Or sorry, on Queen 10 9 4 3 Hearts. That's where they lead. So we've got 2 jacks with the Jack of Hearts. I don't think we're folding here. Do people like a call or a raise?
Well, we've got a really awkward stack here because we didn't bet, because we didn't see bet. Like this could have been a nice turn to get our chip stack in the middle. Mm-hmm. But now it's sort of over pot if we're doing that here, and we haven't shown any aggression beforehand on the flop. Mm-hmm. So it just makes it more difficult to play these kind of hands when we play so passively and we have position in the hand.
Yeah, Rob?
I think you're obviously going to at least call, but I think there is some merit to raising here also. I mean, all of a sudden right now you have an open-ended straight draw and a flush draw to the third high flush, right? Because you got the jack, the queen's already out there, so you're only losing to a king or an ace high flush. So I think you're pretty strong here. So I think you could put in a raise here. Problem is, to Kim's point, the stack sizes are so awkward. Because once you put a raise in here, you get a call, you're going to have less than a pot size bet left. So that makes it very, very difficult.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
What do people make of the sizing difference going from 4 big blinds on the previous hand to 6 big blinds on the turn lead here? The board is more dynamic. Mm-hmm. It's a wetter board. So in a vacuum, you'd expect the bet sizes to be bigger. I don't know if we can ascribe to this player that kind of savvy or not, but does that impact our decision, Taylor?
I mean, I think what's different here is like how wet dynamic this turn card was compared to the last one. Mm-hmm. The last one, it was a 10-9-5-3, right? Now we have Queen 10-9-4 with 3 of a suit. So there's flush potential, there's straight potential. All of that like makes it like that much scarier. So it allows for the bigger bet sizing. And honestly, like, not that I'm trying to like put someone on like an exact hand, but like if you've got 2 small hearts here for, a baby flush, like you're worried about that. You're trying to get value from a single heart hand. You lead out bigger to try and go after that. Plus there's a lot of draws out there. So like a lot of hands make sense here from our opponent. And we're kind of in that spot of like, well, we can't really fold. We've got so many draws, but we just don't know what exactly we want to hit.
And I guess interestingly, because this is the same villain from last hand, they know that when they checked to us on the flop last orbit, we did not make a stab, even though we were interested enough in the hand to call on a future street. So that makes me think that this opponent, if they had a hand that they thought was worth check raising or leading the flop with, they probably would have chosen to lead because we've kind of shown our propensity to check behind. So I don't know what that means for their flush draws. But I agree this lead on the turn for almost pot does feel like it's a strong but vulnerable hand. So a low flush makes a lot of sense there. Or even
two pair
that just chose to
king, queen 8, 10, 8, like combo draws there as well.
Yep, I think so too. But they don't want to see any other hearts is key. I think that's part of the information. They don't want to see any other hearts. And it is a very, it's a straighty board too, like we talked about. There's a queen 10-9 out there. So yeah, this feels like a made hand that's vulnerable. I like that, sort of like a queen or a 2 pair kind of a thing. So then what does that do for us with two jacks and the jack of hearts? We got the up and down and the flush draw plus second pair. So I think folding is out of the realm of possibility here, as we described. So who
I'm
likes
always
a
calling
raise?
here.
Just calling all the
calling
time?
with the stack sizes as they are now.
Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, and I guess starting with about 30 big blinds, we did talk about that. So that does take the raise out of the sort of conventional playbook. Okay. And Adam does call. The river is the ace of hearts. So once again, ace of hearts, queen of hearts, 10 of hearts, 4 of hearts, 9 of spades. So there's 4 hearts out there. There is a higher straight, I guess, if the guy had...
We have the second nuts.
We have the second nuts because the king of hearts is still out there, and we're blocking the straight flush. So yes, that's right. We've got the second nuts. It's actually a great card for us. Small blind bets 9 big blinds. I think at this point, the pot was about 18 or so, 18 to 20. So this is about a half pot bet. So Adam has a couple questions here. So should we fold? Should we call? Or should we raise? And if we call, what hands can we beat? So I think we can beat a lot of hands. The question is, are they hands
every
that are
hand that
betting
doesn't
here?
have the king of hearts?
Right. yes, exactly. So, and then the question is, how many of those hands are taking this betting line? And I think, four to a flush with a juicy straight out there too. That's going to dissuade some of those one pair hands from value betting here, I think. But we're just crushing a lot of the rest of their range. Is going to make this bet. So, I don't think I'm folding. What does everyone else think about what range they're betting with and the best way to proceed?
I think this is not the king of hearts. I think the king of hearts would bet a lot bigger than this into this stack size, knowing that we have something that we called with on the turn, and trying to get paid by that. I mean, you can take the passive route and call here. I'm probably just shoving.
That's what I was going to say. I'd fist bump, shove. I'm trying
to get paid by all straights, all 2 pair, all sets.
Yeah.
And lower flushes.
A lot of them are going to bet. A lot of the 2 pairs, a lot of the straights, they're gonna bet on this kind of a board to try to take you off. The fact that it was the ace of hearts is a very good card for you. That means he doesn't have it, right? So that jack is looking so much better right now. I think I fist pump jam.
And yeah, let's just take a look at the inventory of hearts available to this player. So the king is still available, but the ace, queen, jack, 10, and 9 are all gone. So if he has a king of hearts, it's either with another card that is not a heart, or it's king 8 or lower. And if he doesn't have the king of hearts, then the highest heart he can have is an 8. And that would be the third highest flush available.
And the 9.
Oh, is it not? Oh, the 9 was a spade, right? Yeah, good point. Yeah, you could have the 9.
In fact, the 9 is probably quite possible, given that it has a pair plus now a flush.
Yes. Yeah. So what does that tell us about their range there, or about how we should respond?
So I'll take the opposite side, where I'm probably wrong again, but I'm calling this 1,000% of the time. I'm fist pump calling it. I think I win almost all the time. But I think our opponent can definitely have the king of hearts in their range. And I don't know what raising accomplishes. Is the 9 of hearts going to call us?
I think they will. I
Really?
think that all flushes will call us.
No.
Really, on a 4 flush?
You'd be surprised. People
I'm
will
play in those games.
Yeah. People will just call with their that great flush, small flush they made on the turn. They're just not ever giving it up on the river.
So you're saying like if they had the 5-6 of hearts, is that even possible? Like the 5-6 of hearts, they can't let it go because they had the flush and now it. Yeah, maybe there's those kind of players, but I think that you're getting paid by all sets, all straights, and all two pair for the most part. No way. Really?
Sure. Well, is there any straights there? Yeah, there's straights.
Oh, yeah, there's straights for sure. Yeah.
Not many because we block them all, but.
Yeah.
You think Queen 9 is calling this?
I wouldn't be surprised, especially if they have the 9 of hearts.
Well, yeah, if the 9 of hearts is a flush, but.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I see that four flush out there. People get scared.
It's not like we're 100 big blinds deep either. We're not that deep, right?
And let's just address that point here, because I think when our opponent bets 9 big blinds, if I'm doing the math correctly here, that should leave them with something like 16 behind, 15 behind, something like that. So it's.
I think it only leaves them with like 11 behind.
Yeah, so maybe that. Yeah, something like that. More than 10, but fewer than 15. So they're choosing a size that it should be kind of hard for them to get away from if you do shove, because it's basically just going to be that and a little more back at them. So I wouldn't be, when I see the 4 flush and a straight setup out there, I don't think it's time to start value targeting 2 pair. Because I feel like 2 pair is going to be folding more than I want them to if I'm targeting them for a call here. So I think just looking at it in a vacuum, my inclination is that you're going to get called by some hands that you beat, but not as many as I think you're thinking, Kim. Just because I think people get more scared.
Right. So what's the difference? I mean, if you call or if you go all in. If you call, you're probably going to win this 99% of the time. If you go all in, you have the opportunity of winning more chips. So the risk of losing to me is so small that I'm going to risk that to gain more chips. I think that's kind of where we're coming from here with the jam.
And if we're really only worried about the King of Hearts, then when we call, the King of Hearts makes up a pretty small part of their entire betting range there. But if we do raise, when they call the raise, the King of Hearts makes up a significantly larger portion of the range that they have that takes that action. So I think we're just that much more likely to be, when he does call, it's not like he has the king more often, but with the range of hands that he does call, the King of Hearts, there's just fewer hands that we beat in that range, obviously. So we're like more likely to find that King of Hearts in his hand. So it really comes down to a math problem, I guess. We could look at the combos that we think they're going to call with, and just decide, is it worth it? If literally there's just these combos that have the King of Hearts in them, and that's all we're worried about, how many of those other ones will they come along with? Yeah, Chris.
What I guess I'm realizing this episode is what I really need to think about is I think of river bets on these kinds of boards as very polarizing. Like I think that when you have a 4 flush on the board, I would be surprised if straights or sets even bet out of position. Maybe they it just checked back too much and they're trying to get some thin value, maybe, but my experience is those kind of get into, oh God, that 4th heart comes, now I better get into check call mode. And so I maybe need to think about these spots a little bit more. Maybe people are betting more than I'm getting too nitty around these spots, but
I've recently seen it. I was at a tournament at Orleans a couple of days ago, and I saw this exact scenario where there was a 4 flush and a guy bet out with 2 pair. He had top 2, no flush, and he got called by another guy that had had a couple of 2 pair. Neither one of them had the flush, but they both, one bet on the river and one called without the flush.
Those players have to have don't they have to have the plan of folding to a raise?
I would think so. I would think the player that bets 2 pair on the 4 flush board, I would expect that they're planning to fold.
I just ran this through Odin, and they want a all in every time you hold the Jack of Hearts.
There you go. So that's based on the assumptions that your opponents are taking I put all the bet sizings.
And what do they want the small blind to lead with?
I have to go back.
Yeah, good question.
On the 10 of Hearts turn?
On the Ace of Hearts river.
On the Ace of Hearts river. Okay.
And if you like
they
this,
want them to lead with they want them to, well, I'd have to break it down to see if they want them to lead with all of just heart combos, right? So obviously all of their kings, they just want them to shove if they've got a heart. Except when they just want to raise when they have king 8 with the 8 of hearts. So when they have the king of hearts, they just want to shove.
But they're not leading any straights, right? Or are they?
Straights would be, no, they're just checking them all. 8, 7, and 8, 6, I guess with hearts. They're leading those. 5, 4.
The flushes, yeah.
But they're not, no, they're leading those are their shoves that are that are their bluffs, are their 5, 4s with no hearts. So, and then they're shoving pretty much all of their kings with the king of hearts. And then their kings that don't have the king of hearts, they're just raising with if they have a suited king of hearts, they're just raising because they're blocking all of our heart combos. I mean, they're just betting. They're just leading like 12 big blinds or something. It's recommended, not the smaller one. The smaller sizing that they have, when they lead that smaller sizing, they want us to jam every time with the Jack of Hearts in our hand.
With Jack of Hearts. Yeah, so that's interesting.
So Taylor, what's the population doing there at Canterbury?
I think there's going to be a decent amount of raise folds here, actually. I mean, I don't know 100%, but my thought is if someone does lead like a straight, which I don't think is out of the question, that whenever they get raised on this board, they're probably just going to end up folding.
I'll tell you what they call with when we jam.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah, we're not talking Odin here. We're talking the guys that are sitting around the table at Canterbury.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Most of those guys are not GTO players, I'm sure.
They call with most of their flushes.
Interesting. Even on like I guess that just seems counterintuitive.
They don't end up with very many of them. They're not supposed to.
Right, because they would have taken different actions.
Right, they're folding everything else. Yeah.
Right. So their low flushes actually end up being at a different point in the distribution.
Most of them are suited. Like they'd have the king 7, the jack 7, and then some other ones that they want them to call with, like 8, 7. They're in there with that, and they have a heart in their hand.
Mm-hmm.
They want to call most of the time, and then obviously with the kings, right? Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know if that makes me more inclined. I think I might be more confused now than I was before. Now I'm even less sure about how I want to.
But our point was that they do want us to shove all our jacks with the Jack of Hearts in them.
Yeah, and I guess that's going to typically be true of the second nuts in a lot of circumstances, right? Like just going by the distribution, they're going to want you to take that action with the second nuts a lot.
Yeah, but I think I can understand Chris's point that just calling, jamming all in is not going to accomplish anything unless they're going to call you with something less than the king eye flush. And in that population, they probably are not. So I think if you think about it from that standpoint, then GTO says to jam, but I think in reality, the exploitative move is to just call there, and now you're exploiting their king of hearts, and they're not able to take you out of the tournament with it.
And if we had the king of hearts, we'd be shoving, right? Over their bet because we've got the nuts. So we've got the jack of hearts, and we're not going to, or maybe we are, maybe we're not, but this is the discussion that we're having now. How low a heart do we have to get before it's not even a decision anymore? There's the 9 of hearts. If we had like the 3 of hearts, I think we're probably calling here as well. Or well, we're not raising. Let me put it that way. Is that fair to say with the 3 of hearts? Because it's importantly different than the jack of hearts when it comes to the other hearts that are out there. So how important is it that it's the jack?
If you're talking other hearts,
yeah,
they're definitely only a call.
Yeah,
there's only a call, and some of them could be just folds, like the 3 of hearts. The 3 of hearts would probably definitely be a fold. The 9 of hearts, I could see potentially calling.
Yes, the third.
I don't think anything else under that I would call with as just a naked heart.
Like, would you think that if they had pocket nines, they probably wouldn't limp unless they're limping unless they're doing that limp every small blind. So.
And when you get to that point with it, I mean, there's really just the king, the jack, the 9, and the 8. Like those are the only hearts that are available here. So given that that's the case, I think we probably have to shove the jack from a distribution point of view, because we can't just shove the king of hearts, or maybe we can, but literally the next best hand available to us is a hand with the jack of hearts, right? Am I missing a...
Well, and I guess, I mean, I've not to belabor this much longer, but I mean, to me, these are the most, some of the most honest. And if they're not honest, it's like pure bluffs, right? There are people out there who will just take their random 2 spades and be like, yeah, I got it. You don't, you can't. It's a chicken board. I've got it and you can't do anything about it. But for the most part, I think population, especially in these sort of lower buy-in stakes, that 4 flush board is terrifying. And it's and I think people become, they might bet, maybe they'll bet their straights, maybe they'll bet their low flushes, but that's why I like a call with the jack. I feel like we're going to find the king here a decent amount of the time. But
I think they would be betting bigger with the king. I think that when they bet small like this, relatively small compared to what's left in the stacks and the what's on in the pot, is they're trying to set the price on the river, and they don't want you to set the price on the river. But
I guess it's still independent. Some
they're going to have the king of hearts sometimes. I agree.
Right, but I think that is a good point. That if we think the king of hearts would be inclined towards a different sizing here, then that does make this all the more enticing as a shove with the jack. And I think talking about it like this has really helped me understand when it comes to distribution, how high in our distribution this hand actually is, as it's demonstrated here. So then that does incline me to shove it more than I would be inclined to do at the beginning. Because at the beginning, this felt like a call for me as well for the same reason. But we're just not going to have many better hands here that we can add to that King of Hearts shove. And when that's the case, I don't think we want to be shoving only with the King of Hearts and one combo of bluffs. I think it's probably I don't know. Last thought for the gang here. Am I on the right track with that distribution analysis of this? Is that even something?
But I don't know that you have to have a shoving range.
Right. Good point, Rob. Good point. That's a good point. I always presuppose that that's the case, but the first question Nate Mavis always asks when he looks down at his hand, before he looks at his hand, is, what do I have a raising range here? Do I have, and then he thinks, okay, so what would be the hands that would fall into that range? But you don't actually have to have a range for every action in every spot. That's a really good point, Rob. And if you're only going to have one combo in it, then maybe you are better off just having that as part of just eliminating that range entirely. I'm not sure this opponent's going to be, well, I don't know. Interesting.
Good hand. It was a good hand.
Yeah, really good hand. It was a really good conversation. I thought this one was going to be a quicker one, but just when you get Rec Poker Wizards talking poker, this is what happens, eh? Well, any other thoughts here before we wrap this one up? Thank you to ARW for putting this one together. And of course, to Kim, Taylor, Rob, John, and Chris, and Dave in the chat, and Website Amp, and Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino. Help us out, folks. Rec.poker/support. Check it out. See you later.